With retaliatory tariffs on some goods and a lower Canadian dollar, businesses will face higher import costs. Canadian businesses, and I'm looking at them, buy roughly half of their machinery and equipment from the United States. In addition, profit margins are squeezed because higher costs are gradually passed on to final goods prices in Canada.
Canada is in a catastrophic state, and so is Ukraine, but for different reasons. This video is broken up into these following parts. The beginning is world news, but specifically talking about Ukraine, Putin, Trump, and Justin Trudeau's involvement as of today. Then the middle part is going to be focused on Canadian news, including the Bank of Canada governor saying Canada's pretty much screwed financially. And the final part is going to be a Fox News segment where they're talking about Canada and how Justin Trudeau has absolutely ruined this country. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. And once you are subscribed, there's a little bell icon that you can hit. Just click and tap that so you can actually stay notified of upcoming videos. Without further ado, let's get right into this because this is absolutely crazy. So Donald Trump is giving Zelensky an ultimatum. He called him a dictator, and he said, look, you're a dictator. You basically use emergency powers to not have an election because of the war that's going on, and that's not okay. You're taking money from America and other countries, and you're not paying it back. That's not okay. So either you have to resign, and maybe Russia and Ukraine can have peace. And that's something that's actually been brought to the table that Zelensky is now having to consider. So let's start things off with that.
Мир для України, якщо вам дуже потрібно, щоб я залишив свій пост, я готовий. Друга історія, можу поміняти
I
це
can
на...
exchange it for NATO membership if there's such an opportunity. So he's talking about basically resigning as president of Ukraine, and then there would be an acceptance from Ukraine into NATO. So he's recognizing that he's the problem, which is pretty admirable, I suppose.
НАТО. Якщо є такі умови одразу, щоб довго про це не говорити. Я фокусуюсь на безпеці України сьогодні, а не за 20 років. І не збираюсь бути у влади десятиріччя, тому це, напевно, мій фокус і бажана мрія. Після закінчення воєнного
After martial law is lifted, elections will be held and people will make their choice. And so it really doesn't seem like President Donald Trump is giving Ukraine any choice. He's sticking by his promise, and he's saying, look, I'm gonna stop the war. No more wars under Trump's administration. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, hostages are being negotiated. Ukraine is bending at the knee because obviously it seems like they've elongated this war with Russia. Not trying to defend Russia, but I'm just saying that it feels like all this is kind of unnecessary, and we're being proven that right now. But things could change as of today because Justin Trudeau, along with other leaders, are actually going to visit Zelensky. Justin Trudeau's final time, at least as prime minister. Ukrainian president says Trudeau is expected to visit Ukraine on Monday. Trudeau will be one of 13 foreign leaders attending the summit on peace for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky said on Sunday that Prime Minister Trudeau is expected to visit his country as of Monday. Canada prepares to participate in a virtual G7 meeting where Russia's war in Ukraine is expected to be discussed. Let's take a look now at Trump calling Zelensky a dictator, which is pretty much leading the charge, or that rhetoric is helping lead the charge on just really stopping all of the conflict as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much.
For those who might have missed his scathing words posted earlier on his Truth Social platform, U.S. President Donald Trump repeated them for all to hear at this event in Miami.
Modestly successful comedian he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played
slam after slam targeting Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
So the takeaway from this is FAFO, right? F around and find out. But jokes aside, I think the bigger takeaway is you can't go up against America. You can't go up against America. It's not going to work. Not right now, not under Trump. And Canada is in the crosshairs, not for war, not being annexed, but in terms of a trade war and maybe potentially annexation. But that's a story for another day. There aren't really any new developments on that as of right now. But what there are some new developments on is what's going on with the Liberals, the disqualification of the Indian Princess Ruby, and what's actually happening with the Liberal Party. Because as I posted in yesterday's video, you saw the polling is showing, drastic results from anything that we've ever seen. And it's getting kind of out of hand. But I'm going to put it up right now for those that haven't seen it. A lot of people are saying it's fake, people are propaganda, it's controlled. I'll leave that up to you to decide. So Pierre's projected apparently to hit 177 seats, and you need 172 for a majority, and he was at like 220, and apparently the Liberals are up to 120 projected seats, and you can see for the first time in 3 years, 99% likely across the board is no longer a thing. It's a thing of the past. But what's actually going on with the Liberal Party in terms of their politics, not just their polls? Well, let's take a look at what the analysts, the pros, have to say.
Latest twist and turn with the Liberal leadership race, Dalla out. Is that surprising, and what kind of an impact will it have?
Yeah, I think it is surprising. It's a dramatic thing to take a leadership candidate, somebody who served as a member of parliament in the past, and effectively void their candidacy. That's not a decision that's taken lightly. And so, when I hear the protestations of Ms. Dalla, I am forced to also think to myself, well, they must have a substantial number of concerns. They must have a long list of violations that have caused their eyebrows to cock, and they must be taking this very seriously. They wouldn't just do this capriciously. And, according to reports, her campaign was given ample opportunity to respond, to provide detailed explanations as to how these violations.
Yeah, so to sum it up, there's a lot going on, right? There's the ties, previous years ago, ties to the Modi government. Apparently, there was a way to track the Liberal board of directors, Liberal Party is claiming that there was a way to track money from a foreign government or foreign entity to her campaign vis-a-vis donations. She's denying that. There's a lot of things going on. There's also claims of racism, right? Ruby is saying that she's being discriminated against vis-a-vis racism because she's a woman, but a woman of color, and that's why the Liberal Party doesn't want her in, as well as claims, self-admitted claims from Ruby that she was really catching up to the polls against Mark Carney, and that's why they cut the ties, is because she was becoming a threat to Mark Carney. I don't have the answers to what actually happened on the inside. It's an absolute mess, and this makes the Liberal Party look very bad. The Liberal Party prides himself on progressiveness, on 50% of the cabinet or 50% of Liberal MPs are women. This was a phenomenal opportunity to have 3 women running against 1 man. That's like the misogyny holy grail for the Liberal Party. Oh my goodness. You can't mansplain yourself out of that one at the upcoming debate, right? Like, that's crazy. You'd add Karina Gould, Chrystia Freeland, and Ruby up against Mark Carney. Oh my God. Talk about female power. You could see it all over the banners and the ads, the TV, everywhere. But they dropped the ball on that. So you have to ask, why? What's going on? Was she a threat to Mark Carney? Is this really racism? Again, I don't have the answers, but I do want to pass the question off to you. Would you like me to interview her here on this channel in the coming days? That is something that could be brought to the table as a real opportunity. I just want to make sure that you guys are going to want to see that. Next up, we've got the Bank of Canada Governor, Tiff Macklem, and oh boy, he's saying there won't be a bounce back. In fact, these tariffs are going to be long-lasting, and they're going to bankrupt Canada. This is extremely scary. Let's take a look at this.
Consequences of a protracted trade conflict would be severe, but it would be very different, a very different shock than the COVID-19 shock. In the pandemic, we had a steep recession followed by a rapid recovery as the economy reopened. This time, if tariffs are long-lasting and broad-based, there won't be a bounce back. We may eventually regain our current rate of growth, but the level of output will be permanently lower. It's more than a shock. It's a structural change. The first thing we would see is a marked decline in exports. As Canadian goods become more expensive, U.S. demand for those goods would decline. A lower Canadian dollar would provide a partial offset. In our model, with the scenario based on the February 1 executive order, exports fall by about 8.5% in the year after tariffs take effect. That's the green line. Canadian exporters respond by cutting production and laying off workers. With exports to the United States accounting for roughly 1/4 of our national income, the shock will be felt across Canada. Lower export revenues would reduce household income, and retaliatory tariffs would raise the prices of many consumer goods. As a result, consumer spending on everything from cars to entertainment to housing would slow. With export and consumer demand weakening, Canadian businesses would also cut their investment spending, and higher costs and lower profit margins would restrain investment further. With retaliatory tariffs on some goods and a lower Canadian dollar, businesses will face higher import costs. Canadian businesses, and I'm looking at them, buy roughly half of their machinery and equipment from the United States. In addition, profit margins are squeezed because higher costs are gradually passed on to final goods prices in Canada.
So I'm conflicted right now because as time has gone on, you've had different conversations surface. Who brought forward the idea of the 51st state? Well, now we know that it was Justin Trudeau who kind of joked about us going completely bankrupt and at the mercy of America if they don't subsidize us as the tune of $200 or $250 billion a year when Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago right after Trump won the election. That was horrible because he showed our cards and now he's resigning and we are very much potentially going to be screwed in the long run. Now, here's where I'm conflicted. I feel like Tiff Macklin is doing the exact same thing right now. Hey, everybody, for the world to see, this is no longer a private conversation between the prime minister and the president. This is out in the public. If tariffs come, we are screwed. DEFCON a bajillion. We're screwed 100%. We're all going to go tits up. People aren't going to be buying cars, aren't going to be buying houses. We are all very much financially screwed. I don't know how much I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate the transparency, but why are you showing our cards publicly? Like, this is horrible. This is horrible. It's like being punched in the head and you're going, oh my God, like, please. I don't know. I don't even have a good analogy right now, but I don't appreciate this at all. I'll leave it at that. I don't appreciate this at all.
So what would this all mean for economic growth? Well, in our January projection with no tariffs, we forecast growth of about 1.8% in both 2025 and 2026. But in the tariff scenario, the level of Canadian output falls almost 3% over 2 years. That's the blue line. That implies tariffs would all but wipe out growth in the economy for those 2 years. But if we are faced with a prolonged trade conflict, the only way to offset this negative structural change is with a positive structural change. Now, structural policies are appropriately the responsibility of elected governments and parliaments, not the Bank of Canada. So I will tread lightly here. The bank has previously highlighted Canada's productivity challenge, and it's good to see more focus by federal and provincial governments on structural reforms to increase productivity and investment by strengthening our economic union. Removing rules that restrict interprovincial trade or harmonizing or mutually recognizing provincial regulations could provide some offset to the increased trade friction with the United States.
And it's not just when people think intra-provincial trade, which is now, it's like the new hot girl at the bar, right? Everyone's talking about intra-provincial trade. Oh my God, everyone's gravitating. Let me buy you a drink, intra-provincial trade. Okay, everyone's talking about it. All politicians, all people that are adjacent to politicians, everyone's freaking talking about it. And here's the thing. It's not just oil and gas and Okanagan wine, okay? There's so much more to that. There's also our healthcare system, our services, right? So when you become a chef, right, you get a red seal, or you become a tradesman, you get a red seal. That means your qualifications are recognized across the entire country. You get a red seal certificate in BC as a chef or a trade, and you can all of a sudden fly to the East Coast, who to be to buy to guy, and you could do the exact same job and make similar pay because it's all federally certified and recognized. Bada bing, bada boom. Hey, look at that. That's a good system. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to everything. And some examples of that would be doctors, could be nurses, could be paramedics, right? Oh my goodness. Healthcare professionals. Wait, is that why we might have a healthcare clog in our system right now? One may ask. The answer is, oh, fuck yeah, absolutely. The government has used emergency powers for all of the wrong things over the past 5 years. For crying out loud, you have immigrants, good, skilled immigrants that are coming here that are qualified as nurses, as doctors, as, whatever, a healthcare practitioner, right? They could be a paramedic. And of course, I'm using those three examples because those are the three that I'm most, I'm versed in, because I know people in those fields that are very much being screwed over because of this. They can't be Red Seal certified for their service that they provide, their trade, their skill, and go work in different provinces, which would really help alleviate a lot of the clog. Not to mention people that come into the country, or people that have come into the country that are skilled in those things, and they're instead doing Uber Eats delivery or DoorDash, to give an example, right? That's insane. So it's not just intra-provincial trade with goods. It's also our services that it's so bonkers. Canada is barely a first world country the way we're managed. Our infrastructure is so shite. Oh my God. Toronto should never flood the way it did from rain. Are you kidding me? Give me a freaking break. We shouldn't have paramedics that are being qualified in Toronto or in Ontario, and they can't now get up and go all the way to BC. Like that's crazy. That's crazy as well as being recertified. That's bananas. Canada is living in the freaking Stone Ages, man. And people like this, right? Old timers are running this show, and it's all about money. It's all about control and money, not actually fixing the country, which is why one politician who's got his hat in the ring right now, who's been the first to bring, he came to the bar with the hot chick, right? Pierre Poilievre walked through the door like a saloon. The doors went wide open, and there was wrapped around his arm, yes, Anna, but also intra-provincial trade. And it's so important to actually sit down and discuss that. Not politicians, not the Bank of Canada governor, not people in suits and ties, but real people that are in those fields that actually know what the heck is going on and all the blockades. So intra-provincial trade, now you know, is more than just goods. It's also a shit ton of services.
Provinces could also make it easier for workers to move within Canada by mutually recognizing different labor accreditations.
I literally paused it.
There's also scope for all levels of government
5 seconds
to reduce the timelines and uncertainty related to regulatory approvals. And better east-west transportation links would make trade within Canada less expensive and help get Canadian products to overseas markets.
Everybody's talking about intra-provincial trade, intra-provincial trade. That's the latest thing. Oh my goodness, we're so freaking behind in the times when it comes to that. But let me know down in the comments if you or someone you know has been affected. So sorry. If you or it sounds like an infomercial. Let me know down in the comments if you or someone you know has been affected by intra-provincial trade or the lack of. Oh my goodness. I don't want to clog up this video longer than it has to be. And so I know I said we take a look at Fox News and then ripping into Justin Trudeau. I'll make a video about that later. This video is already reaching 20-ish minutes or something like that. So we're going to end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to encourage you guys to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. And I'll see you all in a later video. Bye for now.